I welcome you back to our ongoing and continuing study in the Gospel of Matthew. We find ourselves in this portion looking at Matthew chapter 26. And once again, we are just going to look at one verse. We are going to be looking at verse 58 of Matthew chapter 26. I'm reading from this pocket Bible, which is the New Revised Standard Version. But Peter was following him at a distance and as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Peter might make stupid mistakes, but Peter was not a quitter. Here we have Peter spying on the proceedings in Caiaphas's home. We can understand that that entails a measure of risk. No question about it. In our day and age, there is no way that Peter could have done what he did. The arrest of Jesus would be all over the internet, and the cable news networks would be repeating it hour after hour on the news. The video of the arrest of Jesus would be played multiple times. The result, of course, would be that the apostles would be all known. People would see their faces and know who they were. Peter could only slip in to see the proceedings because nobody recognized him. It is a completely different age than ours. The question I have is what motivated Peter to do what he did? He had already failed Jesus in the garden and soon would fail him again by denying him 3 times. In other words, what was going on within the heart, the soul, and the mind of Peter? In other words, we know what he did in recent past and we know what he would do in the near future. He was definitely not ready to make a last stand with Jesus. What I would say to you is that we see a person who is conflicted. A person who is conflicted is a person who is caught between a sense of what he should do or she should do and what they feel comfortable with. That in order to embrace that, they have to leave their comfort zone. And that comfort zone, well, it's comfortable, it's secure, it is what they know. And that is to go into something that is unknown, uncertain. And in that sense, confliction arises within the person because they want to stay here, but feel the need to go there and don't have the resolve to leave this to embrace that. And the confliction comes within because they're drawn to this and can't let go of this. And you get a sense as I go back and forth on this, what it means to be a conflicted person. There is that sense in which Peter cannot let go of Jesus, and yet he's not willing to take that stand with Jesus. He knows what is right and good, and at the same time lacks the courage to follow through with Jesus. Peter was a conflicted Christian. Peter knew that Jesus was worth following. The problem was that it could not be done on Peter's terms. Peter would have had to come to the point where he was willing to see it was not just enough to desire to follow Jesus. You see, we could say it is noble and good to desire to follow Jesus, but Peter was at that point where he knew that to follow Jesus was to do so on Jesus's terms. It was no longer noble and desirous to follow Jesus if that meant Peter continued to do it on his own terms, and Jesus would not have allowed it to be. It had to be to follow Jesus on his terms. It is the same reality with you and I today. You see, understand we can make the story of Jesus such that everybody wants to follow Jesus. But that begs the question and misses the point. The conflicted Christian is the person who realizes that they must follow Jesus on his terms. And There are a lot of people who will follow Jesus on their terms. A conflicted Christian, now I will generalize, is generally speaking a person who is younger in the faith. Why do I say that? Because if you get older in the faith, generally speaking, you only get older in the faith because you worked through some of these issues. Conversely, a person who is younger in the faith that doesn't work through these issues does not arrive at older in the faith. Now, clearly, we are saying that there are people in the church, and I'm not going to give a percentage. I'm saying that there just simply are people in the church who have been there for decades, who feel comfortable in the church, know the language, and so on and so forth, but somewhere have fossilized in their faith. A conflicted Christian is usually a young person in the faith, a person who has made a sincere decision for the faith. We are not saying that that person is half-hearted in the faith. Again, look at Peter. There was a sincerity in his faith experience. There was a desire to follow Jesus, and there was an exuberance and excitement to do that. But it was all on Peter's terms. We are saying that the conflicted Christian is the person who can be determined to follow Jesus. And the person who is young in faith has made that decision to follow Jesus. A few months or a few years pass, and then their faith leads them to a fork in the road. And times past, were women who felt the call to go to the mission field. To embrace that call to the mission field was to do so with pretty well the certainty that it would mean the loss of a marriage potential and the raising of a family. That was a real fork in the road. We could think of maybe of a teacher who serves in a suburban school with a nice job and all of the perks, who feels the tug of God to go serve in an inner city mission or inner city school to teach. And they know that to do so is to leave aside some of those perks, including the opportunities for continuous study. They are at a fork in the road. It could be the person who loves the times of worship in their church and the music and the opportunity to gather with God's people and celebrate the greatness and blessings of God. But God is calling them to take up with the children's ministry at that time and to serve the youngest of the congregants in the church. And the person knows to do so is to forsake the times of worship. That person has hit a fork in the road. There is a conflict that in each of these cases must be resolved. Most of us in situations will try to put it off as long as possible. That's what Peter did. Peter did not come to the night of the arrest of Jesus and be in conflict. This predates this. How long, I cannot tell you. But there was this sense in which Peter was becoming more and more aware of the gulf between the desire to follow Jesus and his own willingness to pay the cost to follow Jesus. This was all brought to a head in the arrest of Jesus. And Peter would have to work this through. And he took ultimately the fork in the road that said, I will follow Jesus, even if it means death. I will follow, no matter what the cost or price. And unfortunately, people become conflicted Christians and see the fork in the road and say thanks, but no thanks. Some remain in the church, some do not. Let us be true to the call of God on our life, whatever the fork in the road it is for us.